Good evening and welcome to the 2021 Martin Luther King Jr. Day edition of the Thoroughly Wrong Project. Tonight Francisco and I ventured into the multi-layered world of free speech and inflammatory language. Sometimes when you hear things like this, you might possibly get offended. But take heart, as everyone who listens to our podcast knows, we're probably thoroughly fucking wrong anyway. Enjoy. Welcome to Thoroughly Wrong. And now your hosts, Francisco and Robert. Take it away, guys. All right. Welcome to Thoroughly Wrong Project. It's your host, Robert and Francisco. We had a couple guests today. One went out on a personal issue and the other one might have COVID. So it's just us again, man.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Never mind.
What's up, man?
Nothing much. Just been getting ready for my last semester at BC, so I have that to look forward to.
All right.
Getting my stuff ready and then just working, trying to not die, I guess, in this global pandemic.
You got your shot?
No, not yet. I have to make the appointment.
All right. I got mine, and I tell you what, man. It felt like Andre the Giant punched me as hard as he could in my arm for a couple days.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it hurt, man.
Pretty thick serum you get.
Is that what the problem is?
I mean, I imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, because I don't think because I've got shots in the arm before, and I think it depends more on what's in the shot than the actual needle that gives you those sore feelings or like pain for a few days.
Yeah, well, he gave me the shot and I was like, "Are you done?" Because I seriously did not feel it at all. And then I don't know. I woke up the next morning and it was a little sore, and by that evening, the day after I got it, I ran into the wall and cringed, man. My wife came in and tapped me on the shoulder and it hurt for 2 hours. So never had anything like that. But like I said, if you got to give me a COVID-19 vaccine in my left eye while you're hitting me in the stomach, go ahead. I just want it done.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. I'm back on the 11th. So
that's funny.
That's cool.
Yeah, I just need to make the appointment to make mine. But I think I lost my insurance card, so I need to get at least the number so they could like run it through their system, you know?
Yeah. You need your insurance card and your ID from work.
So I need to just call my insurance and be like, "Hey, can you just at least give me the number?" Because I don't want to wait for them to like mail out another card, and then that's gonna take a few days, and then the appointment that's another few days. So.
Yeah, you don't have a few days right now.
Yeah, so
they're going to be out of shots.
Get it done. Well, I heard. I've heard like a lot of contradictory things. I've heard that some people, from one of our coworkers, I heard that they wait because they give them in batches, I guess. So they wait for like the slots to fill up, to be like, okay, here's your appointment, come at this time, and then they just give them, like back to back to back.
Yeah,
but they were having trouble like filling the slots, and then I'm also seeing like these like mass vaccination like centers where there's like a line like down the block. So I don't even know if are they short or are they running out?
Well, yesterday on Meet the Press, they were talking about Biden wanted to release the ones that were being held back, and it came to light that there were none to be held back. It was just a fluke. It was a lie, another lie, that they don't have them. So now they're scrambling to make more and find more. So who knows what the fuck is going on?
Nice. But yeah, I'll get it done. That's not the issue.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because it would be, hey, welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project with Robert, and well, he died.
No, I'll be fine.
I imagine you will. It hits Hispanic people harder, doesn't it?
Yeah, but a lot of those things, a lot of those like I don't know what you would call them, headlines, or they have just more to do with like the person's health. So like Hispanic people on average tend to be more unhealthy, you know? So
Yeah.
that's why it's not like this fucking virus is like, oh, you're Hispanic, I'm gonna fucking kill you, you know? It has more to do with like the overall like health, um, health, how healthy that population tends to be.
Okay, that
Like
makes sense.
a lot of African American people suffer with like diabetes, like type 2 diabetes. So it's
Right.
gonna hit them pretty hard, so stuff like that. So it's more of that. That's the actual like they have more like underlying issues. Which I mean we that's a whole other episode we could talk about why minorities tend to be sicker, but
Yeah, I was
that's
just
a
getting
whole
ready to launch into that and ask you, like, what's up with that? But I kind of know what's up with that. It's a poverty demographic, is what it is.
yeah. So
Yeah.
and then there's like a bunch of things you could talk about that, but
But today we are here to discuss something I I don't even know how to approach it, man. When you talk about free speech and you talk about uh, the First Amendment rights and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all these social network platforms are just cutting people off. And I, you know what? I see both sides of it, and I don't know. In Trump's case, I see why. Um, Following that lead, I see why they do it. But in other words, why did they get to decide what's dangerous, what's not?
so you said you see the reasoning behind it, but do you agree with it? Like what's your stance on it? That's what I want to know first of all.
Well, I'm going to get in trouble here. I know I am, but I agree with it. You can't. It's inflammatory speech, and inflammatory speech is not protected. It shouldn't be, if it is, because the threats and the the information that's put out there that's false that could get people killed. Those are things. Those are things we don't need to have as free speech, in my opinion.
Okay. So when it comes to, I mean, specifically to the whole like Twitter fiasco with Trump, um, I feel like there's a lot of layers to it that it's kind of hard to just. It's not as simple as like, oh, it's free speech.
Right.
Um, I'm a big advocate for free speech, but at the same time, in order to have free speech, it's gonna sound kind of like counterintuitive. Uh, but in order to have free speech, you have to curtail some speech. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure.
So I'll try to give you like an example. Let's say you're like Times Square. It's a very crowded place. A lot of people. I mean, probably not right now, but in general,
Yeah, I get it.
there's a lot of people there. Let's say some dude pulls up with like a gun or rifle, whatever. He just starts mowing people down, right? Well, wait. First, before I get into any of that, are you like pro-life? And I don't mean like pro-life like abortion, but I mean like, do you think people have a right to life in general?
Yeah. Sure.
I would assume yes, right?
Sure.
Okay, so with that given, I mean most people would agree with that. Um, let's like going back to the example, you're in Times Square. This guy comes, starts mowing people down. Uh, what do you think should happen? What do you think the police should do? Should they shoot him and stop him from killing more people? Do you think that would be a correct decision to make?
Absolutely.
Right. So with that example, you can translate that to speech. In order to have uh, free speech, there's certain types of speeches or certain types of speech, sorry, that uh, I don't think should be allowed because of what it does to other people's right of free speech, if that makes sense.
Sure. All all freedom puts a burden on a population, and I'll bring it back from murdering people, and I'll say, well, on this podcast, I'm allowed to say, God damn it, fuck you, shit, piss, motherfucker, cocksucker, and cunt. I can say anything I want.
Yeah.
Now, that's offensive to some people. So here we go with this. Are you allowed to say, I'm offended, you need to stop talking? That that's where it gets really dicey. It's like your speech offends me, so you need to stop saying it. And in my opinion, I say, well, if my speech offends you, you need not to listen to me. But if we are in the same room and I am saying those things, then you're in a bind where I'm taking your freedom of not being able to, avoid that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I don't think it should be like wrong or like illegal, I guess, to, you know, offend people. Like it's not a
Right.
crime to be an asshole, you know? Um,
Well, Donald Trump's an asshole and he got cut off of Twitter. So
but I think there's a distinct difference between being like, "Hey, you're fucking stupid," to like, "Hey, um, like just being more bigoted language, you know, being like
right.
racist, homophobic. I think those are probably like the two biggest categories when it comes to like all these people getting banned off these platforms is because they tend to be really racist or really homophobic.
Right.
um and then another thing, like another layer of this whole Twitter fiasco is, at the end of the day, Twitter is a private business, and whether it should or it shouldn't be, that's a whole other discussion. But uh the point of the matter is that it is. So they have a TOS, which is terms of service that, everybody agrees to when they sign up. So those same people that, advocate for, hey, that bakery shouldn't be allowed to, make a cake for a gay couple because it's their private business, it goes against their religion, whatever, uh, are the same ones saying that Twitter shouldn't be allowed to ban Donald Trump. When, if you think about it, it's a pretty similar situation. It's a private business. They have their terms of service. Like I said, they could do whatever they want if they deem that somebody has violated those terms of service.
Right. Like you go in a store and up behind the counter it says we reserve the right to serve or not serve you, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, man. Sud- Suddenly you just opened up a whole can of fucking worms. I'm like, wait a minute, I never thought about that. That is a free speech thing. The So is it offensive to be homophobic or is it illegal to be homophobic? Now here we go.
It's not illegal to be homophobic, but there's certain like there's protected classes, and race and sexual orientation fall within those classes. So when you discriminate people based on those reasons, then that is discrimination, and that is illegal, especially when it comes to places of business. If you
So if you're
go
just go ahead.
like if you go into a bakery and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna serve you because you're gay," that's discrimination. But if you go in there and you're all like, "Hey, fucking bitch, make me this cake," they could be like, "No, I'm not gonna serve you because you're a fucking asshole." That's okay.
So can I mask my homophobia with I just don't like you? Yeah, you can. And then the burden of proof lies with the homosexual person to say he's discriminating against me or he or she is discriminating against me because I'm gay. And then the person turns around and says, "No, I just don't like them." And I'm a private business. I pay my taxes. There's the sign. I chose not to serve you. This gets really really dicey, and I think that it's it's sad. It's based in just ignorance and preference. That's what it is. And if you're smart enough, you can skirt around race, you can skirt around sexual preference, and you can just say, "I don't serve you because I don't like you."
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that just because um, like a lot of times that denial of service comes like only after like they find out that they're gay or something, you know?
Right.
Like in that bakery situation, like the person probably went in there and be like, "Hey, I'm looking for this wedding cake." They're like, "Oh yeah, sure. Like what kind? Like what are you looking for?" And then they're like, "Oh, well, me and my husband want this." And they're like, "Oh, we don't do that." You know? So
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point, it's very obvious why you're refusing to serve them.
Well, what about when it's not? Let's jump back to 1965, 66, and signs in the windows say we don't serve hippies here. Hippies aren't a protected class.
No, they're not.
Okay.
So I mean, but what would you consider a hippie? Like, do you have to look a certain way? Do you have to talk a certain way? What?
Back in 1966, hippies were pretty obvious. It was the flower children, flowers weaving their hair, long hair. They were fairly
It stood
dirty.
out.
Yeah. So it was obvious what they were. And they faced a whole wall of discrimination. And basically that went away because culture changed and hippies went away. And then the hippies that were left became some sort of fucking nostalgia, and everybody loves them now.
Oh, okay. So they were pretty pretty easy to spot.
Pretty easy to spot, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean when it comes to like free speech, there's this whole um like the whole like devil's advocate type thing or like the counter argument is well, you know, it's kind of a slippery slope of what isn't allowed.
Hmm.
And
It isn't kind of a slippery slope. It is.
a lot of people will say, well, if you ban this, then they're gonna try to ban this and that, and then pretty soon we can't say anything.
Right.
And I mean, for the some people call it a slippery slope fallacy because, as you know, a fallacy is something that um you know isn't really true. Like, isn't doesn't it doesn't really work that way.
Right. Right.
Just like in my example of, you know, that guy at Times Square mowing people down, um, that police officer makes that choice to shoot them to preserve the life of others, you know? So
Right.
it is possible for us as a society to be able to, you know, for the most part at least, be able to make that correct choice. And I believe we could also do that when it comes to speech. Like it's not, well, they're gonna start with like the really they're gonna start banning the extremely like racist or like homophobic things, and then from there they're gonna just move more to the left, you know, and they're gonna uh, eventually I'm gonna be banned from like calling someone like stupid or an idiot or something. And I don't think we would ever get to that point, just because I don't know. I feel like us as a society, we're just not we're smarter than that, you know.
Do you?
Like, I mean, personally, I do. I feel like when it comes to, you know, what to allow and what not to allow, um, it's pretty cut and dry. At least, you know, when it comes to like incitements of violence, and because I mean there's been mass shootings, uh there's been murders where people write these manifestos, and in the manifestos they name certain people that they saw, you know, off YouTube, like, hey, I did this because you know, I listened to this person, or I saw their video on YouTube, and you know, it inspired me to do this. And they'll leave that, you know, that manifesto for people to find afterwards. So I think we can take a look at that and be pretty like certain, okay, like what did that person say that would, you know, incite this kind of stuff. And it's something that I think we could like pick out. And I mean, I think everybody would deem it as inappropriate or, you know, very volatile, you know, except for the people that agree with what they're saying.
Right.
Sure, those are the only people that wouldn't agree with banning them. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is causing people's lives. You know what Donald Trump said. There was like, what is the death toll at right now? Like 5 people that died at the Capitol
Yeah.
event thing. So I mean, these are actual people's lives that are being taken. You know, whether it was the police officer who was trying to protect the Capitol, or whether it was like, people from the mob that were trying to storm it, because some of them died. At the end of the day, people died because of his words. If he
Right.
didn't, have that rally that same morning, if he didn't, since November 3rd, start tweeting about how this election was stolen, I'm 100% sure that those five people would be alive today.
Right.
And a lot of
I
people,
agree.
well, you can't really, draw a direct line from what he said to, all these events and, them dying. And I disagree with that. I think you can draw a perfectly straight line from his rhetoric, his message, to what's happening, especially what happened on the 6th.
Okay, so couldn't we define that as the slippery slope, even if we backtrack further than November 3rd and we start looking at, okay, when he stepped into office, things were fairly calm. I mean, we're having a lot of mass shootings, shit like that. And he steps into office, he starts talking, he starts tweeting, he starts lying, and this army of people begin to agree with him. And this thing begins to happen, and at the bottom of this slippery slope, five people are dead. Right?
Yeah.
So when do you stop it, and how do you stop it? I mean, Twitter says no. It's like there's this deplatforming of Donald Trump. We took away all of his platforms, and things have been fairly calm. And they took away the platform from the Proud Boys and all these people. And they ban all these people. All they did was go to the dark web. All they did was go to apps you can't trace. So how do you stop them, man?
I mean, to like fully, completely stop them,
Yeah,
uh, I don't think you really can in that, sense of the word, just because, I mean, to stop them, it would mean to stop their way of thinking and the ideas that they hold.
right. Well,
And to
let's
allow,
not say stop them. Let's say take away their bravado.
um, well, like it's the same thing. Like it's kind of hard to. Some people are so deep in like the rabbit holes of like QAnon and all these conspiracy theories that there's like nothing that's gonna bring them out. Um, but there's also a lot of people that are sort of like on the edge, or on the cusp of things, and those are the people that you can really like help by making sure they don't see these certain things, or that they don't go into these rabbit holes.
Right.
And those are the people that would benefit the most from these things. I mean, apart from all the other people that are getting insulted daily, um or like getting thrown all these like homophobic or like racist insults, you know because if do you know who Steven Crowder is?
No.
No. He's like this super like big YouTuber. He's like a right wing like pundit. He's like huge on YouTube. You should look him up.
Okay.
uh well, have you ever heard of I think it was Vox. It's like this news network called Vox.
Yeah.
So there's this reporter on there. I think his name's Carlos Maza. He did a few stories on like it was like a political like video, and on Steven Crowder's page, he like they watched that video like on his YouTube channel, and he was basically just making fun of him, which I mean isn't wrong, but in the way he was making fun of him, he was calling, because Carlos Maza is he's gay. So he would like call him like things uh like fag, like let's be queer, all these things. So whenever Carlos Maza, and this dude has like millions of followers on YouTube. So whenever he would like check his DMs or like tweet or anything, he would just get like barraged with like tweet and like comment after comment of like people, calling him those same things because of what Steven Crowder said.
Right.
So it's things like that. Um, you know, if you're getting constantly like attacked and barraged because of someone else's free speech, that impedes your own free speech. Does that make sense?
Sure. Sure.
So I think that's
It's
something that um, shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of people out there who wouldn't be doing what they're doing if they weren't empowered by someone who they consider a leader. And when you
Yeah,
take that leader out, they'll disperse. They're like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
exactly.
Yeah. So the thing here is, we continue to have racism in America, and although I can't say that it's fading. I don't know. I'm not a victim of it. I don't know for sure, but I do know that homosexuality is accepted more and more now. Um, but it's a matter of time, and the people who are entrenched in it, as you said before, they just need to age and die, I guess. But it seems to me like there's always some asshole to take their place. Always.
Yeah, I could see that, but I also think that like percentage of people is getting smaller and smaller, um, especially like with every new generation that comes along. I
Yeah.
remember I saw this report that said that I think it was in like 19 like in the 1950s or 60s, they would do surveys of like, do you think interracial marriage should be allowed? And at that time, like 8% of people said yes. And now I think the last survey was done a few years ago, and it went from 8% to like 87% said yes. Which I mean, there's a few things there. Like to me, 13% is still a lot of people that would say no. That alone is concerning, but it really shows that things have changed and we have become far more progressive than,
Yeah.
50, 60, 70 years ago.
How
So I
many of
think
those people are telling the truth also because they don't want to look bad?
um I mean, I feel like that percentage of people that are trying to just like save face and do it for the optics, are they there? I'm sure they are, but do I think it's a large percentage? No, I think it's a very small percentage of people. Um, just because it's very, I don't know. I think like that idea of like interracial marriage has become very, I mean, normalized,
Yeah,
especially.
sure.
So, are you gonna have those outliers? Yeah, that just say yes because they know that they're getting surveyed, but in reality, they think no. Yeah, of course, you're gonna have those, but I think that's a very, very small number of people. I think the overwhelming majority are still just in agreement with it and telling the truth.
So let's go back in a circle. Let's circle back and let me and listen, everybody who's listening to this. This is just me being the devil's advocate. This is not the way I feel. But what if I was to say, I don't agree with gay, I don't agree with interracial marriage? Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't be allowed to say that. That's not.
Isn't that isn't that inflammatory?
I wouldn't say that's inflammatory. If you say, I don't agree with interracial marriage, that's one thing. If you say, um, anybody that any white person that marries a black person doesn't deserve this earth and is a waste of air and shouldn't share the same air as me, and they need to go out, or like something needs to happen to them, they need to leave us alone. I think that's something else, because at that point you're, even though it's not directly, and a lot of people would try to say that, well, they're not directly calling for violence, um which I mean, I don't think any like prominent, you know person with influence or a following is going to directly call for violence, because that would just be stupid on their part. But at the same time, uh by saying things like that, they know like what they're doing, and they know there's people listening out there that are like, just off the rails, and they're willing to like, you know uh kind of just do their willing for them,
Yeah.
so I think, saying like you say, I don't agree with that. Okay, that's one thing. People could call you racist or they could call you a bigot, but when you say, well, those people shouldn't breathe my air, and Stuff like that. That's very inflammatory.
Well, how do you, you know, how do you feel about the blatant racism on Family Guy, American Dad, things like that? Those I know it's satire, and I get it. I know it is. But do you think that that propagates it, it keeps it going because it's funny? Or do you think it should be funny? I mean, and let me say something here. My grandfather was a Klansman back
Hmm.
in the day. I mean, hardcore Klansman. He led the tri-state area, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. He so you got to think this guy was part of lynchings. He was part of beatings. He was a really evil man. He really was. And when he was old, I mean old, like nearing 100 years old, he lost his mind and he would just rave. I took care of him as he was dying, and he would just rave and say the most racist, hateful things, and people laughed because he was harmless. But I didn't laugh. But nowadays, you know, 15 years later, here's Family Guy, and they're not saying the hateful things that he said, but they're still saying racist shit, and it's funny. And I wonder sometimes, should that just be removed from our language, and wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't that be a better thing than our children growing up hearing this racist shit that they can't decipher as satire or comedy? They just hear it, and it becomes real to them. So shouldn't we just remove that speech? And here we go with back to free speech. What can we say on television and what can we not say on television?
Well, I mean, when it comes to like television, I think um, like everything that's on TV is very like private. When it comes to they're owned by these like media companies and these TV companies. So I think, especially as of late, they've become a lot more um, like sensitive to the issue. Like I've watched. I don't know if you've seen The Office, uh, but like in the early season, there's tons of jokes on there that if you think about it, like that would not fly today. And
Right.
that show in that those only aired like maybe 5 6 years ago. So there's been a big jump as of late when it comes to what people, and I think because of the whole like outrage part of it, like people hear something and like there's like this knee jerk reaction of getting outraged. It's caused a lot of like fear in these like TV and media companies to be a little bit more like careful about what they allow or don't allow.
Right.
And then there's places like Family Guy or like South Park that like don't give a fuck and just gonna say whatever they want. Um, but like going back to your example, I think that hateful aspect of it has a lot to do with it. Um, like you said, like your grandpa would say all these hateful things, and people would just like shrug it off or like laugh it off.
Yeah.
And then now like South Park or Family Guy, uh, they kind of, I wouldn't say they say the same things, but they'll make jokes about those same issues. Um, and people laugh and it's funny, and they get all these um, reactions from it. But I think that hateful aspect of it has a lot to do with how it's viewed, especially when it's delivered. Like South Park is this, like no holds barred kind of TV show where they pretty much just attack everybody. They don't really care who you
Yeah.
are or what you stand for. Like they'll attack, and by attack I don't mean like literally like attacking like in an offensive way. They'll make jokes out of current events or whatever's going on in the world. They don't really hold back on anybody. So I think that has a lot to do with it, just how it's presented and how it's delivered. Because I mean, personally, like I love South Park. Like Family Guy is like whatever to me. I just think it's very corny and repetitive. But like South Park, I think South Park's like hilarious, and like they'll say some, like they literally have a character, a black character, and his name's Token, and he's the
Oh
only
yeah.
black character in the show.
Right.
Like that in itself is uh like a quote unquote joke, you know?
Right.
So I think the way that it's delivered and the way that it's presented has a lot to do um with uh how it's like received by people. I mean, there's some people like on the left that, you know, like hypersensitive to things like that, and they just like denounce like things like that, like South Park or Family Guy. And you know, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to, you know, boycott them or like, you know, call them out and say stuff like that. And that's, you know, that's their free speech at work. But at the same time, I don't think you can really compare things like that to people uh, that are on the internet, like calling for like violence and inciting these violence, whether it be subliminal or not. I don't think things like South Park or Family Guy really do that. Um, so I think there's a big difference between those two categories of speech.
So when it's satire comedy, it's okay. This is something I have tried to sort out for years because I, like you, I fell in love with South Park season one. You know, an
Yeah.
elephant has sex. You know that. Do you remember that episode? But but I've loved that show for years, and I have been left with my mouth on the floor of some of the shit they have done. And so you try to sort that out. You say, okay, this is funny and that's not funny, and this delivery's funny, but that's not funny. And all the shit you're talking about is just the way people perceive things, and it could be a mood or an atmosphere. It could be anything because we'll take what the hell is his name? Michael Richards. Do you know Michael Richards?
No, I don't know who that is.
He used to you've seen Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he was Kramer.
Oh, okay.
Well, after Seinfeld went off the air, he went back to stand up comedy. Well, he's in a comedy club and he's being heckled by some black people, and they call him the N word. Well, he returns it and tries to return it comedically. It didn't go over, and Michael Richards has been gone ever since. So it just he didn't mean it. He he explained it over and over and over again. I didn't mean it like that. I meant it in a comedic sense, and nobody bought it.
Yeah.
So it's just the way we perceive things. And like you said, those people on the left perceive South Park like some people perceived Michael Richards. And other people look at Michael Richards and go, oh, fuck, that was funny. And South Park is hilarious and Token is hilarious. It's pointing out the fucking obvious here, is what it's doing.
Yeah, and I think also what has a lot to do with it is the like the medium that it's delivered in. Like South Park is a cartoon, you know, it's not some like news network trying to give you like current events, and then they throw like a quote unquote like racist joke or like homophobic joke in there. I think that's uh like when it's done like that in that way where it's somebody that's they want you to take them seriously, and then they say like super like, you know, edgy jokes like that. I think that could be um like that's more on the edge of people taking it the wrong way, you know. I mean, nobody really takes South Park seriously. Like they're not looking for South Park for like their, you know, moral compass or like, you know, what's right or wrong. Like it's it is what it's always been. You know, this like, you know, these little kids in Colorado like just fucking
Being
doing
little kids in Colorado, yeah.
yeah. So it's not trying to take itself seriously, and it's never tried to take itself seriously, regardless of what people have said about them. Um, but when it comes, let's say like Tucker Carlson goes on there and like I mean, as far as I know, he tries to take himself seriously. I don't know how many people actually do, but you know, he's a news anchor, and then if he was to say like a joke that was like that you would think would be on South Park, I think a lot of people would react a lot more differently than if they saw it if it was the exact same joke if they seen it like on South Park compared to someone like a news anchor saying it. And
Right.
I think that also weighs into the perception of, well, is that really funny or did you say it because yeah, it might be, slightly like racist joke or something, but you want to be taken seriously, so people are going to take it seriously. Whereas that's a cartoon and they don't take themselves seriously, so nobody's going to take whatever they say seriously. And I think that also plays into it.
Yeah, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they're not trying to they're not trying to be icons of morality or anything. I get it.
Right.
I get it.
So I think, there's just so many layers to it. Like you said about that guy, I mean, we could get into a whole discussion, and I think we've talked about it a bit, like off air about, um, at least my views on the whole like N word, uh,
Right.
like thing and how it's perceived and what my opinions are, and a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, um, which is kind of like, considering everything I've said about everything so far, you
Right.
wouldn't think I would have that view on that topic, but um I just see it like that certain way, when it comes to the N word. Like I feel like words change, words evolve, like meaning change, like take the word gay, for example, it used to be
Yeah.
happy or whatever.
Yeah.
Um and this, just I think the basic idea or principle that only certain people can say a certain word just doesn't sit right with me. And because Rick, if one person says it in a certain context and then another person says it in the exact same context, they just look differently, so they're not allowed to say it. That doesn't make sense to me. Uh, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It, I, now listen, I think oh shit, man.
Like I get what they're trying to say, like, but when people say you're not black, you're not allowed to say that. Um, like that doesn't make sense. At least to me, when it comes to, uh, I mean, just to
Can
that
I say
idea.
it differently? Can I say, you know what? It makes perfect sense to me, but it still doesn't I can't I can't comprehend it. Like it's like, what the hell is going on here? I get why you don't want to hear it from a white person. I get it. It
Yeah,
gets offensive as fuck. I get it. It's offensive as anything that I wouldn't ever say it. But at the same time, if you remove all the color from it, is what let's philosophically break it down and talk about it. If we remove the black from it and the white from it and the culture from it and all the things that are built around that word, and you just say you can say it but you can't, it doesn't make sense. That's what
yeah,
you're trying to say.
and I think
And
go ahead.
yeah, just the word gay, the word, the I he's gonna hear this later. Best friend I ever had in the world is a gay chef. I call him faggot. He calls me faggot. It's like it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with it. It's almost a term of endearment, like the N word is amongst black people. So it's who I'm using it with, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
If I say it angrily, that's a different context. If I say, you're a fucking faggot, and that comes across differently, doesn't it? I mean, there's nothing. It's not a mystery. I'm using it in a derogatory sense, but if I'm using it as a term of endearment, yes. But when you sing this word in your music and it's everywhere, you use it in front of me, and I'm not allowed to say it. It seems like, God damn, I'm going to get in so much trouble here. Like you, it doesn't make sense to me. I
and
understand it, but I don't understand it.
yeah, and like you said, I understand like the outrage and why you wouldn't want, a certain type of person to say that word.
Right.
Uh, and I mean, like you said, certain words have changed to more like terms of endearment. Like nobody says the hard R version of the N word in a term of endearment. I
Right.
think I think regardless of who says it, the hard R version is like you're trying to be, offensive, and like you're trying to insult somebody. Like nobody says that that word specifically, like an endearment. But it's evolved like the double GA version of it, I guess you could
Right.
call it. Um, like you said, people say it in their songs literally all the time. Like I'm sure I think I've told you before, like Kendrick Lamar's like my favorite like musician,
Right.
and he's a rapper. He says it in his songs a lot. There's a video of him at a concert. He like brings up a fan from the stage to like sing a song or to like rap one of his songs, and it's like you could tell it's like this huge fan. Like he's like so excited. Like he probably knows like all his songs like from memory. And they play the song and he starts rapping to it, and he says that the word, the N word, the double GA version of it, and he's like, whoa, whoa, like he like cuts off the music, like, oh well, like just skip that word when you're rapping it. And I love Kendrick Lamar, but to me that like if you don't want people to sing along to it, or you're only okay with certain people singing along to it, then why put in the song in the first place? And
Well,
I know that sounds kind of like arrogant, or like misguided, or like, oh well, you just don't get it because you're not black. It's like the word, like I'm sure, like if you were to try to say it, like if you were to think of being just even think about saying it, you would like hesitate. But like I could say like the word like spick,
oh, I wouldn't say that.
yeah. And see, to me, I could say it and like I get it, like, oh, like I don't feel any type of way if I say it. But then if um like a black or white person I, like I hear them say it, I feel like some type of way about it. But I think the difference between that, like I've heard people compare those two things, like, oh well, you wouldn't call it if they call you a spick. What are you? I was like, no, I wouldn't like it. But at the same time, I don't go around calling all my friends like, oh, what's up, spick? You know, like
I'm
whe-
sorry.
whether they're like Hispanic or Mexican or whatever, I'm not gonna be like, hey, spick, what's up? Like that's not that term. It's it might change in the future, but as of right now, it's still like only used to be offensive. Same like wetback. Nobody's
Yeah, that's
I mean in Spanish there's a term, it's called mojado, which basically means the same thing. Mojado means wet. But the way they say it, it's to signify wetback. And even that word uh in in the Spanish language has kind of evolved to a little bit more of, I wouldn't say endearment, but just it's not taken as harshly anymore. People would say it like in a jokey manner or like as a joke. Where in English the word "spick," I don't ever hear it as a term of endearment within the Hispanic community or any person that says it. So I think those you can't really compare those two things because I mean language just evolves like as society goes. Like there's words that we have now that we didn't have years ago, and words change meaning all the time. So I think
do you
it's
think go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Do you think it has something to do with the power structure in America or wherever? I mean, like lots and lots of white people, and white people have been in charge for 200 years, so if you call me a you know uh, what is a cracker, I'm like, it's a fucking joke. That's to me whatever. It's yeah. I've been called a cracker angrily, and it still didn't. I still was like, well, whatever. It
Uh,
doesn't
yeah,
hurt my
and
feelings.
I think the difference, or the thing that stands out that's different about those two things is um black people would get called the N word. They were enslaved, they were treated lesser than human.
Right.
They were oppressed systemically, and that hasn't really happened, like at least not in the current times with quote unquote white people. Like white people haven't really been like enslaved for hundreds of thousands of years, whereas people of color have. So I think that changes the meaning of things. Like if you call a white person like, oh look at that damn hillbilly, or like you said, cracker, like a lot of people just shrug that off.
Packerwood is another one.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, like that, it's not offensive. I mean, I'm sure it's offensive to some people, but like overall, the majority of people, they'd be like, okay, like that doesn't affect me, you know. Whereas the N word, like especially like I said, the hard R, um,
There's a
it
long history of violence behind it.
yeah, and I think I mean, like I said, I understand, like I get it, um, like because there's history of violence and because there's this history of the quote unquote white man using it to bring down the black man. I get why you wouldn't want them to use it in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes, like you said, philosophically about this person could say this word in this way, and this person, even though they're saying in the exact same way, can't say it. Like
Right.
philosophically, that, like you said, it doesn't make sense. But in reality, like in the real world, with all these other factors playing into it, I understand it, um, but I just don't um like agree with it. I mean, I don't go around saying it like all the time, or like I try at least not to say it. Even with like in private conversations. I mean, I mean, I'm 26 years old right now. Did I say like in high school or like growing up with my friends, like, yeah, I'm not gonna, you know, hide from that. I feel like most people, especially nowadays, most kids grew up saying they've said it at least once or twice in their lifetime,
Yeah.
uh, if not like way more,
Well,
So I
all you got to do is sing a Kendrick Lamar song, and you said it.
Yeah, and like when it comes to songs, like I don't like. I feel like it's a song, like it's meant to be, rapped or sing along with. I don't see any problem with anybody saying it, and it's specifically that category, like of sing along to a song. Um, like if you don't want it sang, then don't like put it in your song.
Have you seen Office Space?
Office Space, no.
In the beginning of Office Space, there's a white guy in traffic, and he's bumping some hardcore rap, and he starts to ease up slowly because traffic is slow. And there's a black guy walking down the street, and he reaches up and turns it down. He's like, I don't want to deal with that. So I don't
And I
think
mean, I've been to like I've seen Kendrick Lamar in person, so I've been like to his concerts, and when his song's playing, like I mean, in concerts they don't censor themselves. They say the song as
right,
it's
of
made.
course.
So you look around and like there's all types of people, at his concerts, and they're all just singing along. And I think it also depends on the person. Like uh, some people just don't feel comfortable saying it um, at all. Like
I
in general,
certainly don't. I
in
certainly
any
don't.
in any like capacity. And I mean that's fine. Like I said, me as an individual, especially as of late, I've like made the like conscious decision to like not say those things, even not just that, but uh I told you, like my girlfriend's a special ed teacher.
Right.
So even like not just with her, but like in general, it started like with her, but I've kind of like expanded it to like to anybody I talk to. I try not to say like retard anymore, like, oh, you're retarded. I
Right.
just say things like idiot or stupid, like, oh, you're a fucking idiot or you're fucking stupid. um Things like that.
I understand that. When I worked for Bark for about 5 years. And when I went to work for Bark in the beginning, Bark stood for Bakersfield Area Retarded Citizens. And it was on their paperwork, it was on their headers. You answered the phone that way. That's the way you did it. And then about a year before I left there, everybody suddenly say, retarded is kind of a bad word, and they changed everything. So
yeah.
I totally get how words change. And
Yeah, and I mean, even
I have a
retarded
word.
always like it didn't have the connotation that it has now, right?
No, right. No, it is what it
Like people used to
it
call it, oh, like he's mentally like retarded.
yeah,
And
that was what doctors called it. I mean, that was what it was.
yeah, so that just goes to preview like words change all the time. Like people now, if you say like they don't even say like they'll say like the R word, or
Mhm.
like the R slur. So that just goes
Mentally
to
challenged now.
yeah, like words change and their meanings change. And like if I see a white person or like a Hispanic person like singing along to a song, or like they go up to their friends and you're like, oh, what's up, my N word.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be like, oh, dude, you shouldn't say that. like, do I personally say that? I try not to as much. Like, it'll slip out here and there, but I'm not like, but that's my conscious self, like making that decision for myself. But that in turn doesn't mean that it should apply to everybody. Like, hey, bro, you should like stop saying that word. That's just me personally.
Well,
So even though I'm doing it personally, I don't think it should be like, forced on everybody, like that same principle.
you're
Because
we're
if
still
people
in the
grow up,
free speech, right?
yeah, because I mean, people grow up like, if you grow up like in the inner city with like a bunch of like, a lot of your friends are gonna be black, or like you go to like predominantly black a high school or something, like you're gonna hear that, like that's your environment, and people are a product of their environment. And if you grow up around that thing, you're gonna grow up, you know, being like that or like talking like that. Like that's just how things work. That's how everything works around us. Like I said, you're a product of your environment. So you grow up around something, you're gonna grow up, identifying with that and mimicking that behavior.
But that doesn't excuse it. It
Yeah,
does
but I'm
not.
saying, like, I'm not saying, but I mean, I'm not asking for it to be excused. I'm just saying that's how it works when it's like when you have a, like I said, if you grow up in that environment of people saying it like, an endearment all the time, or uh a lot of, I think context has like, it plays such a big role in, issues like this, because I think context means everything when you're talking about that. Like if you're like, a lot of people even replace that word with different words. Like, have you the word like bruh, right?
Yeah.
Like when something and people are like bruh.
Yeah, I'm a meathead. I've been in the gym all most of my life. Why?
Yeah. So I've heard people say, instead of bruh, they'll use like the N word, like, and they'll just like drag it out, uh or like they'll like I said, they'll talk to their friend and they'll say that, and it's like a swappable word with like homie, or like dude, or like bro.
Okay.
uh has that's the same meaning that they're giving to that word. um and I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. So I think context and what you mean by it has a lot to do with it. um but yeah, that's just my opinion.
Well, what if let's go to Georgia. Let's go to a predominantly white, predominantly racist high school. And I'm going to raise a kid in that high school, and he's going to grow up with that speech that you just talked about. That's because that's what you said. You're a product of your environment. How how dangerous is it to just say, well, he's a product of his environment? That's like the guy you were talking to that steps out in the middle of downtown New York and starts shooting people. And we go, well, he grew up in a terrorist cell in Iraq. We have to excuse it. So there's levels here that we're talking in, and layers that you just pull back and pull back and pull back until what is the what is the basis of what the hell we're talking about? And that's what we as a culture, we have as a society, we have to get to in order to find something we can agree on about language, about what we call each other, about how we speak to each other, about the context and the tone, all these things. it it will it Do you think it'll ever be solved? Do you think it'll ever be solved?
um I think it would take a long, long time for that to be solved, if ever, just because uh there's such a wide like range of opinions on, that topic.
Mm-hmm.
um that it's very, like, you would have to change a lot of people's minds, and even then, if you do, like, there's still people even more extreme than them that, like, well, you can't even say this and that.
Oh,
And
now we're back to the slippery slope.
yeah, but I mean, the slippery slope, I don't think the slippery slope like would ever actually like win, because those are extremist people both on the right and on the left. um there's even some people that don't like the term like black, like, oh, you can't say black, you have to say African American.
Right.
And I mean, I personally think like that doesn't really make much sense, because I mean, you don't say, oh, I'm Italian American, or I'm German American.
Right.
uh I would like if I see somebody, I'll be like, oh, they're American, and they just happen to be black. You know, there's uh there's tons of Jamaican people that hate being called African American because they'll live in like places like New York or Florida, and people will call them African American, be like, no, I'm Jamaican. Uh, so I think there's uh, you know what I mean?
How about if everybody just stopped being offended?
Yeah, good look at that.
Instead of saying, "Hey, motherfucker, I'm not from Africa. I'm from Jamaica," just say, you're mistaken. I'm Jamaican. Sorry." You know?
Yeah, but I mean, even like that's what I mean. Like, I'm sure some like Jamaican people would get like really upset, but I'm sure there's a lot of them that just be like, oh no, I'm actually Jamaican, and be like, okay, cool, never mind. Like, oh, he's Jamaican, he's not African American. So,
And from that point forward, that person who called him an African American should cease saying that word until he says black again and some black person says, "I'm sorry, I'm not black, I'm African American." So then he just stops talking to fucking everybody.
yeah, so see, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't, if it does like get solved at some point, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be in our lifetime at all. Um, but I
You
mean,
should
down the
just
road.
I heard somebody, a comedian, say one time, he said, "We should just fuck until we're all tan and then forget about it."
Yeah, it's gonna take quite a while, if ever. So, I mean, the best thing I think we could do right now is kind of just, balance the line until we're dead. So, because there's always gonna be people that are gonna get offended at what you say, regardless of how offensive or not offensive it is,
Right.
because of what they personally think. You can if someone there's tons of people that like don't get offended by the word retarded, and then there's you're gonna say it one time in front of a person or a family that has somebody that's has a Down syndrome in their family, or is mentally disabled, and then they're gonna hear you say it, and then they're probably gonna like go off on you like, oh, you shouldn't say that because this and that. So people's own lives and their own experiences are kind of they're gonna shape what they find offensive or not. So
If I grow up in England, the C word, which we have to call it the C word here in America, the C word is a term of endearment.
right.
Yeah. But here it's a term of you get your head slapped.
And then it's weird because like when girls call girls like each other that, it's like they it's still like offensive, but it's not as offensive if as a guy was to say.
I feel like I'm being pigeonholed here, man. I'm a white guy, so I can't say that, and I can't say that because I can't say that because I'm not black. I can't say that because I'm not Hispanic. I can't say that because I'm not female. Should I? I just need to stop talking, dude. Fuck this. I'm going offline. Podcast is over. I don't want to say anything anymore.
Just revert to like idiots and stupid like me, because I mean that encompasses that those words have no it encompasses everybody, so
There you go, man.
we don't
What?
discriminate against anybody.
Well, I tell you what, we have said some inflammatory things today, and probably going to get some pushback. Don't care, because in the end, I just have to say the dialogue on here is exactly what it is. It's dialogue, and we need to talk about these things, and we need to stop being offended. And I need to be able to say, you know, is this offensive, and why is this offensive? And when you tell me and give me your reason, I can go, okay, that's offensive. And I think that in the end, what I said before is we need to stop being knee jerk fucking offended immediately about everything that comes down the pike, and we just need to say, now wait a minute, that's not very nice, and you need to not say that again, or because it's hard to offend me because I want to learn, And I think if everybody had the same, I want to learn attitude instead of saying, no, I'm going to punch you for saying that, I think we might be better off.
Yeah, and like you said, it's really good to like instead of just having these knee jerk reactions to kind of take a step back and think about it like, well, did they mean it to offend me? Like, were they being ignorant? Like, were they saying it as a joke? Like, what was the reasoning for saying that? And really think about it. Um, we'd be a lot better off. And even then, like you can have a discussion. Like, hey, this is why it offends me. Um, and at the end of the day, you might after that conversation, you might still disagree. Well, like you'd be like, okay, well, I still don't find it like offensive. Um, I probably won't say it around you. But within like my inner circle of friends, like we say it all the time. So I'm not gonna like change that. And I mean that's okay to a degree. So it's just a matter of perspective and, like you said, having that dialogue
Yeah.
to really understand what is it that we really want at the end of the day. Like what's the goal? Like where do you want society to be as a whole?
Yeah. Well said, man.
And I mean, like a lot of people have different ideas of what it should be like, and that's, I mean, that's normal. We're humans. We want different things. We all grew up differently, so we want different things in life. We have different interests, so that's that's our right to be able to talk and discuss and change the way we live, um, to best fit whatever we want.
Totally agree, man. You did teach me something today, and I appreciate it. Because every time I'm in the Food Max now and I see that little sign that says "Cuidado, piso mojado," I'm gonna giggle.
That means wet. Like mojado means just means wet in general. But when you call
Right?
something like a mojado, that means, oh, they're wet back. Um, so if you ever hear it like in conversation, like if two people speak Spanish and they call each other that,
And
you
now I know.
yeah, because in your head you're probably like, well, that person seems pretty dry to me, but they have a intention.
All right, dude. You ready to wrap this one up?
Yeah.
All right, brother. Oh my God. Another hour and 6 minutes where we didn't solve anything, but we brought up a lot of issues, and I love it, man. This has been Robert.
And Francisco.
And this is the Thoroughly Wrong Project. And please, please listen to the whole thing. And at the end of it, listen to this statement. Francisco and I were probably thoroughly fucking wrong. See you next time. You have been listening to the Thoroughly Wrong Project with your hosts, Francisco and Robert. If you enjoyed today's show, like, follow, leave a comment, and then look in the description where you'll find our website, Instagram, and Twitter feeds. Until next time, thanks for listening. And just remember, never be afraid to be thoroughly wrong.